So this video will be about an installation of a dash cam on a second generation Buick Envision. This car of mine particularly is a 2022 Envision Essence ST. It has many technology packages on board. The one that's most important or most relevant in this discussion is the fact that it has an automatic dimming rear view mirror, so at nighttime it can transition from a regular mirror over to an automatic shading mirror, as well as it has a built-in feature that is a digital rear view mirror with the use of a camera that's located at the back of the tailgate on the upper portion. The second video I plan on making will use a connector that taps into the electricity source, the 12-volt power supply of that mirror, to feed the dash cam in itself. So this first video is not going to focus on that necessarily. It's going to focus primarily on the installation in general terms, where you can use any power supply you wish as long as it's available and made available rather through a USB-C type connector. So the first series of photos will be showing the location that I chose of the camera itself and where I positioned it in relation to the exterior view, interior, and where I routed the majority of the camera cable that leaves the dash cam itself to make its way over to the rear camera that I decided to mount in the high portion of the rear window. So there was a pretty significant length of cable that went all the way there, and it had like a barrel type connector with about 5 pins for this particular brand. It could be a little bit different for yours, but it's good that if you could do a dry run roughly to measure out the length of cable that you need before you commit to actually putting it in place. So this camera came with a number of things. A USB power supply that plugs into a cigarette lighter. I chose to use an adapter I already had for mine, so I can tap in to charge my cell phone and a second device such as a dash cam without there being any problems or needing a second source of power. So it's kind of like a tap in itself. But this was used primarily as like a testing platform to make sure that I don't overcommit to buying certain things if I see it didn't work out. For example, prior to this camera, I bought a camera that was not of high quality. I think the origin was China, like most of these things are, but there were way too many glitches in it to like accept it as it was. I had to return it. So anyways, so the first portion of the camera installation is against figuring out the positioning. So on the left side of my camera, there's an SD card, a micro SD, where you need to have access to it if you wish to upgrade the chip or replace it because it, just baked in the sun or something like that. Personally, I might upgrade mine. It came with a 64 gigabyte memory, and it can take up to 512. So with 4K resolution, the memory gets consumed rather quickly. So it doesn't leave you a long number of hours buffered of recorded material if you got to go back to it and consult something that happened like 1 or 2 days ago. If you do a lot of driving, it might have got wiped out or overwritten, so you may lose that opportunity. So it's not a bad thing to have a higher volume chip. So the cables, as we fed them, started at the camera itself. I fed the wire vertically up towards the the roof liner. The roof liner in itself, if you're using a very gentle plastic pry tool, can be used to just pull it down ever so slightly. You don't need to exert a lot of pressure, and tuck it in along the window, going all the way towards the A pillar, which is the pillar that's closest to the passenger side rear view mirror. And nearest to the window, you're going to tuck in the wire behind that ever so slightly, right from the top corner all the way down to the bottom corner where the windshield meets the dash. And you're going to have to kind of tuck it in where it's kind of pointed. And then this is a part that kind of gets a little bit hairy to disguise. So the wire itself will have to ride on top of the dash for the contour of the A-pillar itself, all the way around until where it meets the material where the door is. And then from there on end, you're going to go downwards. And after going downwards, you're going to need to tuck it in underneath some plastic components. So like the plastic dash has some parts there. And it'll go all the way down towards the floor area. You're going to follow the crevice that leads to the footwell. You'll come around and you'll start wanting to use the plastic molding that's at the beneath of the doors. Tuck it in underneath from the front passenger seat area. You're going to want to avoid and be careful that you route the cable between the seat and the seat belt itself. Don't go between the seat belt and the B pillar, because then you're going to get stuck and tangled and you won't be able to hide it correctly. And people are going to have an opportunity to get tripped on it or grab it and pull on it when you shouldn't do that. So you're going to continue moving the plastic and tucking it underneath right up until it reaches the back seat backrest. And then you're going to come up between the seat and the plastics, and then you're going to fold forward the seat of the passenger side rear seat, and you'll expose the mechanism. Mine is red, metallic red. It might be because of the paint color that I have. I'm not sure. I have never opened another Envision to see if that metallic loop where the seat clamps onto, if it's red or whatever body color it is. So you're going to come around there, and then you're going to go between material that leads towards the trunk. And once you get in the trunk, it's a little bit more difficult to negotiate. So you may need a few adhesive hooks where it's made for like a wire catch to guide it along the panels along the sides. And again, I keep following the trace all the way up until we get to the weather stripping of the back hatch, where this wire is thin enough that we can technically gently tuck it along the right hand side of the weather stripping, gently bringing up the cable up and around the curvature of the right corner over to the top. And then in my case, I was running out of slack. So you want to bring it to as close as to your final position as possible, but you're going to need to leave kind of like what I would call some elbow room for the cable to flex and move, because as you're opening the gate and closing the gate, the cable has to have the ability to flex and be guided to flex in a similar way predictably every time. Now, this poses like perhaps a weakness of repetitive motions, open, close, that a wire may eventually break, which is unfortunate, but it's not a situation where the wire itself would get necessarily pinched or crushed in any way by cargo, that sort of thing, unless you're being really negligent, like doing things in a very bizarre manner. So those are the ways that I personally navigated my objectives to mount the camera and check it out. Another tip for the rear camera, fortunately I didn't make that mistake, is make sure that you're very familiar on which way the adhesive and the orientation of the camera is supposed to go. Because if you happen to flip the camera the wrong way, like thinking it sits on the bottom side of your window perhaps, you might get an upside down picture when you connect it to the camera, and then you're going to have to unglue everything and untuck all your wires to have to reposition it all. So you might want to do a little bit of planning with that regards, so you don't have an upset to have to re-begin everything. So once that's all said and done, your installation is complete. The only thing I could add as to like some important factors is make sure your windows are as clean as possible for like the plastic film adhesion, so you don't have any problems sticking, your actual sticker that peels off for the camera onto this plastic film. And the reason why you don't want to put it on the glass directly is because if there was ever an upset with the glass or whatever that you need to change it, simply by peeling the small film, you avoid having to wreck the camera by pulling aggressively or whatever. If you go through a series of stone chips or your window gets kind of like sandblasted over time, you have to take the camera off in order to successfully change the glass, whether it be the front or the back. The back also has an integrated antenna grid and the defrost grid, I believe. So that's another contention, to not stick it directly to the back window. You're better to use one of those adhesive, self-adhesive, kind of like clear film type things, so you won't destroy your traces if you decide to take the camera down or replace it or anything like that in the future, that you're not going to break a critical feature. I live in Canada, so to me, I have to have that on the front of my mind. So, the wintertime functions are good to go and always functional. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Thanks for watching. And in a few weeks, or a few days, depending on how my schedule goes, I'm going to try to release the other video, part 2, that uses the connector tucked away in the rear view mirror. So when you're using the on-off function of the car, using the ignition, power will be supplied or taken away accordingly, and reduce the opportunity for there to be parasitic draw rather, from your battery, because these high-tech cars are no fun if your battery runs flat. It'll throw engine codes like crazy. You don't want to get involved with anything like that. So it's best to kind of keep the installation as simple and as straightforward as possible. Anyways, thanks for watching.